Hello, victims and villains. My name is Josh, and today we are jumping into our last review of 2023, and we are ending it by supporting independent filmmakers like Steve Walsh, the writer and director behind the film we're talking about today, and this is Fog City. So Steve Walsh has been a busy guy. Not only is he releasing this film on the tailcoat of the year, but at the beginning of the year, he also directed and wrote the film Kill Her Goats, which is kind of a mixed film. You guys can check out my full review, my full thoughts on the film clicking here, or you guys can also check the notes in the show notes below to check it out as well. I had a lot of fun with this movie, so let's jump in to see if I have equal as much fun with this follow-up, Fog City. Fog City depicts a mysterious fog that invades a small town off the coast, set in West Craven, as a group of friends kind of find themselves at the center of the invading fog, and tensions rise as a result. And much like I've come to realize about how audiences react to Kill Her Goats, this one I think is going to have the same kind of reaction. You are either really going to love this movie or you will really hate it. These are my thoughts on this movie. This movie is 100% a mixed bag. I feel like for every good thing this film had going for it, it does something that takes that good thing and reverts it, or just literally is good and bad at the same time. Like, I think this film does tension really well, but eventually that tension, it never finds a way to continue mounting. It just eventually plateaus, and it just kind of all gives birth to insanity. And now I will say that I did like the insane ending that this movie does do as a result of said tension. But the journey from the height of that tension to the plateau to the eventual return is really kind of a chore to get through sometimes. The acting is another thing that really kind of caught me off guard with this movie. I felt like there were some performances in here that you really felt the gravity and responded to the severity of the situation, of the characters in the film, because of their performance. And then on the flip side, you have other performances in here that just fell really flat and just really wooden, and just felt like they just brought the movie down in terms of performance. And when it comes to the narrative, there's two characters in this movie that literally bring nothing to the movie. They were pointless. Literally, as I was watching this, I kept taking notes. Why are these characters here? Their performances are fine, but they are written as a way, as an afterthought, that by the time the camera or the narrative pivots back to them, you're like, oh yeah, these are characters in this movie. Why are they here? Honestly, I felt like the size of the cast, given the scope of the story, could have been benefited from shrinking the cast down. The cast in and of itself is 7 primary players. You have the previous 2 that I mentioned. When it comes to the narrative, I'm including them in the primary. But then you also have 2 characters that are introduced in the beginning of the movie, then come back at the end. Then you also have 2 cops. So relatively, this film is under 15 people. Honestly, I feel like this film could have had stronger legs had it honestly just focused on the 2 core couples at the center of this film, and it just really intensified the tension, and as well as just kind of simplified a lot of the things that the story is trying to say. But for some reason, we think that bigger is better, and that's not always the case, and Fog City's cast is evident. As a result, the pacing of this movie feels a little bit wonky, and I have this love-hate relationship with it. Like I said, it's both good and it's bad. On the subject of writing, it's really hard to tell whether or not it's the way that the actors are saying the lines or the way that Walsh actually wrote the script, but some of it feels really schlocky, and as a result, mixing that with some of the film's other problems, tone is also a really big issue for this film. Like I said, when it is in the thick of the tension, this movie works really well. But once it kind of starts to ease up on that tension and characters start to separate and make other decisions outside of the group, that's kind of when you start to have some of these tonal issues and even writing issues. I will say though, this film, and I loved this in Kill Her Goats as well, I love the aerial shots that open up this movie, and not only that, but I love the color and the saturation and how this world is filmed. It is absolutely breathtaking. Even with some of its problems, movies like Fog City and Kill Her Goats are arguably two of the most beautiful films that we've gotten this year in the horror genre from the world of independent cinema. And much like Welsh's predecessor, this one does that again. I really love probably the first 10 to 15 minutes. It's just beautiful shot after beautiful shot after beautiful shot. Even the way that certain terrorizing sequences are shot, it's shot with just a level of grace and beauty that you don't really get to see in these more raw and intimidating films. All right, well, this is the last film of the year. This is the last Rorschach rating scales. I'm going to go ahead and give Fog City a 2.5 out of 5. Like I said, there's a lot here that I really dug. I really dug some of the performances. I really dug the cinematography in this, and I really dug how this film handled tension when the narrative was actually focusing on the tension, but then some of the performances felt wooden to me. Some of the pacing and the tone had felt kind of off to me. And then you also get into some of that issues with the tension as well. And those moments that you have great tension and great gags, be on the lookout for some of those low points of tension as well. Fog City is now available to either rent or own via digital, VOD, Blu-ray, or DVD. We'll provide links in the show notes below where you guys can check that out and support the independent film scene. But let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, a mental health moment is where we'll take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're talking about, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. Honestly, probably one of my favorite scenes in this movie is at the height of tension is really comes down to a lack of communication. Sometimes talking and having the conversation of setting expectations is up front one of the hardest and most uncomfortable things that you can do. But on the back end, it is honestly some of the best things that you can do for your mental health and for the state of your relationship with any given person. If there is a relationship that you truly value, understand that that relationship has a mental health to it, between a shared one between you and that other person. And if you want the best for that mental health, honestly, it comes to setting expectations, having an open dialogue about things like mental health, depression, addiction, so on and so forth. Some of us in friendships, we want to just talk about things like pop culture, video games, movies, music, anime, and those conversations are all fine, but really what breaks, at least in my opinion, the difference between an acquaintance and a friend is the people that you can have those really hard conversations with, those that you're having meaningful conversations with, and those that are going to stick with you. And sometimes those that stick with you begin with having those conversations of expectations of what you want from that relationship, what you're expected to give, and just things along those lines. And it honestly probably could have done some of these characters in the movie a big service. uh, so never take your friends for granted, and always be willing to have those open and uncomfortable dialogues. Honestly, a great resource for this would actually be Seize the Awkward from American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I'll provide a link in the show notes below, but it is a program that nonprofit has specifically set up, specifically to talk to friends and loved ones about things like mental health and other depression, suicide, and more. And in the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our mental health resource library, where you guys will find more great resources like Seize the Awkward. In the show notes below, you guys will also find links to pick up and find where to stream or rent Fog City today, how to support the filmmakers, how to support us financially, and by following us on all of our socials, listening to our podcasts, and catching more movie reviews like this, and hitting that subscribe button. Fog City is now available wherever you guys rent or own your movies, and also physically as well. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for helping us grow this channel in 2023, and have a happy New Year.